going to download his brain into ours today. So he's put together an amazing resource for us to use later on in the club and for the workshop. And we are also recording the presentation. Glenn is putting videos together, and then we will have that as a resource as well that we'll put in our sound group on Facebook as well. So we'll leave it open for question and answer. If you have questions at any time.
At any time. Make sure you ask your questions now. And the reason why this is quite important is because, I mean, we're not here to make you sound men in one day, because that's not really what this course is about. It's to get you to learn the entire system, how it works, and get you. And for those of you that have fear of the soundboard, I hope to take that away today to show you that it's really quite simple to use. My plan is to move away from Port Alberni in October. So after that happens, the best you're going to get from me probably is going to be some texting back and forth. So I have done a lot of wiring over the years in this place, and everybody needs to know where that is. So I'm hoping that out of all of you, when something comes up, somebody will go, oh, I remember Dennis said that plug is over here, you know, that kind of thing, right? So I want to give you an understanding of how it's hooked up. So as we go through, I'm going to show you some real basic PA systems, and then show you that really what we have is just the same thing with multiple connections is all it is. It's just like a repetition of the same thing over and over and over again.
So we'll take a break at some point for a lunch, and if you need to go pee or whatever, just go do it. No. Teacher, can I go pee? Don't need to do that.
Yeah. At some point we will take a tour, and I will actually physically show you where all the connections are for everything and how it's wired. You can ask why and all that kind of stuff.
And there's going to be live demo stuff, hands-on stuff. And it's not all just going to be a slideshow later on. We're going to go up to the board.
Yep, we're going to do some stuff on the board. Hopefully those that want to actually get on the board and fiddle with it, we'll do that kind of thing. And we'll definitely walk everybody through setting up. What I'd like to do is set up a microphone with an acoustic guitar, and we all get it all up and running and tuned in so that a person can sit on stage, play guitar, and sing. If somebody wants to, we can do that.
Cool. Well, we know we have at least one person that can do that.
I vote Colleen.
Yes. That's right, at least. So, yeah, be prepared to get up and in and out of your seats to go take a look at stuff and that. So I'll go run the slides, and it's all yours, Dennis.
Okay, so I'm basically, although I put together some slides to have some visuals, I'm basically winging this.
Woo!
Okay, because I've never run the course before. I don't have a clue on how it's going to go. What's that, Glenn?
You need those lights off.
They're in the...
Okay. Is everybody okay with that?
Good morning.
Good morning.
You're here. We're all here now.
Physically here.
Okay, so like I said, stop me at any time, ask any questions that you want. I don't care how stupid you might think it is, I want to hear it. Okay, now's the time to ask. And I will try, and if you don't get it the first time I tell me I didn't get that, and I will explain it another way. Okay? So let's go to the first slide there, Peter. So the first thing we're going to talk about is microphone holder patterns. So basically, that talks about how sound enters the microphone, and we have different microphones, and sound enters them different ways. Next slide, Peter. So there's basically the 4 different sound patterns that the microphones we own, and I'm only going to talk today about things we actually have in most cases. I'm not going to talk about stuff that we don't have here in the theater, because there's not much point in that. Okay, so there's cardioid, omnidirectional, supercardioid, and hypercardioid, or hypercardioid. No, not yet, Peter.
No,
Oh.
sorry. I'm just making a small adjustment. There you go.
So you can see, so on the cardioid, you can see that kind of heart shape. That's where the sound comes in. So if you can imagine, in the next slide, the microphone, that's the microphone right there. The sound coming into the microphone from these directions here will be picked up quite well. But sound coming from the back of the microphone is rejected. Okay? And an omnidirectional microphone, sound can enter the microphone from any place. And Colleen will know this from Patsy because our headsets are omnidirectional. So they pick up sound from in front of you, from behind you. Makes it difficult to use a floor monitor with this. Supercardioid, the sound enters same as this one, but also you get a little bit of sound in the back, but none from the sides, or very little. And the hypercardioid is very similar. You got that. This here is a little bit bigger, and that's a little bit more closed up. Next slide, please. So there's kind of give you a better visual of it, just a 3D. There's your cardioid microphone, right? And sound can come into that balloon there. And here with the same thing, you can see that angle here where it's kind of dead. Next slide. This is where it's important. So here's floor monitors. If you were using a cardioid type microphone, you'd want your monitor to be right in front of you. So here we are, mic stand, it'd be right down there, right? If you're using a supercardioid microphone, it would be off to the angles like this. So you could put like 2 floor monitors facing up to the ears kind of thing, right? And this is mostly important at high volume levels. So if you're getting feedback, you're trying to get that monitor really loud so that person can really hear, and you're getting feedback, then you've probably placing these monitors in the correct position is going to give you less feedback, because the sound coming from here is into that microphone there is less than it is from the side or from the front or whatever, right? And this one here, it's less from straight on.
Are our microphones marked as to which ones they are?
They're not. You just you'll see that I have marked them for you on the next few slides. So you're just going to have to kind of learn which ones are which kind of thing. There's and they sound different too. Each one has a different sound kind of thing. So, but the placement. The other thing that's important too is knowing what kind of microphone you're using and having the kind of issues like we had with Patsy where we couldn't use floor monitors for those headsets. They just, at the level we tried to get at, it was just constant feedback. And feedback is just the sound coming out of this monitor here, going into the microphone and back again, and all of a sudden it starts to do this. Really, the sound rotates through there, keeps getting picked up by the microphone quicker. Next thing you know, it screams. Okay? That's what feedback is.
What's the monitor for? For the person?
For the person who can hear themselves. So you could have a floor monitor that sits on the floor facing up towards the person. You could have a wash monitor which is on the side of the stage, or like we have up top, aiming down from the sides and filling in, that kind of thing. Or you could have in-ear monitors. Sorry, go ahead.
Well, that was going to be my question. So in a case like Patsy, had we had them, would in-ear monitors have been the best
That's
option?
what we did.
We
We
rented.
rented. We do
Oh,
not
okay, I was
have
like, we don't have them, do we?
Yeah.
No, they're very expensive.
Yes, that's why I was
We rented them
surprised.
for over $1,000
Wow.
for the run.
Yeah.
But with the court had
Well, what that does is it frees up stage space for it, which, when we were blocking the show, we had the floor monitors throughout the rehearsals, and then all of a sudden we decided to bring in the in-ears, and all of a sudden that gave us all sorts of possibilities for changing the quartet around without having those big blocky monitors on stage.
We also had feedback happening as we were trying to use mics.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So with the in-ear monitors, you don't have the trouble with feedback?
You can. If you had
Right
the
in
gain
your
up too
ear.
high, it would be ugly.
To make your head explode.
In situations where money's no object, which is not here at the theater, they'll hook up compressors and stuff like that to them, so when they get to a certain point, they'll actually just shut right
Cut
off.
out so they don't hurt
So
you.
you don't blow somebody's eardrums out. But we just tested it. We didn't have to run those kind of levels, so it was fine. Anybody have any questions about this?
So really, it's about if you're getting feedback, it's about changing the angle of your microphone.
That's one of the things. The
Yeah.
other thing is different frequency settings in your EQ, and also how loud you can just physically go. You know, there's a certain point where no matter what you do, it's going to feed back because you're just too loud.
That needs to be less.
Next slide. Okay, so what's the difference between dynamic and condenser microphones? And that's basically a very basic description of the difference between the two. A dynamic microphone basically uses a little coil. It's almost like a speaker itself. And as the coil moves over top of a magnet, it causes electrical signals that are sent to the board, and that's changed into sound. Where a condenser microphone has a little plate that when the sound hits it, it moves. And the big difference between a condenser microphone as far as using it and a dynamic microphone is condenser microphones have to have power. So either phantom power, which we're going to get to more later, or it has a battery in it. Where a dynamic microphone, you can just plug it in and use it. You don't need any power at all. As far as how they work, if you really want more detail, Google's your friend on any of this stuff I'm talking about today, but really to use them, you don't need to know anything more than that as far as using them. Is that when you have a condenser microphone, you have to make sure either you have a battery in it, but in most cases what we do is use the phantom power on the board to supply the power through the microphone cable to the microphone. Questions?
So our condenser mics the hanging ones are condenser mics, right?
They are, yes.
And then the thin one, like
Those thin ones are, and then those thicker silver ones, which I've got pictures of all those.
and then the big bulby ones are generally, those are
Dynamic.
dynamic.
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay, next slide. Okay, so these are all the microphones that we currently own. First one is one we just bought for Patsy Cline, the Shure Super 55. Basically, that microphone has been designed to look like an old microphone that actually came out in the 30s. And but it has, so the guts inside to pick up the sound is called a capsule. So it has the same capsule as the microphone next to it. They make a microphone, a Shure SM58 Beta, which we don't have one of those, but it has the same capsule as that. And those of you that play in bands know that the 58 Beta is the go-to microphone. You'll see it all over TV, and everybody uses. I use one, but sometimes they don't work for everybody. They just don't sound right because every microphone has different characteristics. So with Patsy, we went through. We tried the 58. I brought my Beta 58. We tried some other microphones that we have. We finally narrowed down that my Beta 58 was the best sounding for her. So then we went and purchased the 55 because it sounds the same as the Beta, but looks like an antique microphone, which is what we want. That microphone can be used for anything. It is not just a vocal microphone that looks cool. It can be put in front of a guitar or amp. Anything that you do with any of these other microphones, you could do with that microphone as well. So it's a super cardioid, okay? The one next to it, the 58, which is the difference between the one I mentioned to you, the Beta, and the regular 58, is one is a cardioid and one is a super cardioid. If you wanted to run two, a lot of times musicians want to have two monitors, one on each side of them, then a super cardioid would be your best choice, right?
So we have 8 Shure microphones? I'm assuming that's what the number means. We have one Shure Super 55, 2.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, 2 58s, 3 57s. So the 58 is a good vocal mic, especially for a man. Okay. But it can also be used to put in front of a guitar amplifier or anything, that's close-up mic, like drums or something like that. You could use it. Wouldn't be my choice, but you could. The one next to it is the sister microphone, the SM57. which is very, very similar. It's also a cardioid microphone. It doesn't have as much of a windscreen built into it. So see the round ball in the 58 has actually a windscreen set, yes.
Now, but you can put those foam.
Yes, you can put the
Yeah.
little foam windscreens if you're outside or something like that, or if somebody's really got a lot of,
Hot.
yeah, hot air.
Put a phone thing on my mic and it's just little.
Now, the condenser, is it, the condenser one, is it like omnidirectional as well? Or is that, is it different?
It can be. It doesn't, condenser or dynamic has nothing to do with what type of,
What kind of,
what
okay.
flow pattern it has, yeah. So the 57 is the go-to microphone for miking down high snares and hi-hats, instruments like guitar amplifiers. It's also a microphone that you're going to put really close to something, like maybe a couple of inches away from a snare skin, or a few inches away from a guitar or something like that. You would use that, and it's good. It's also doesn't feed back as much as some other microphones do. All the Shure ones you see on there are pretty good. So this other Shure SM94 is a condenser microphone. You can see it's a cardioid as well. That microphone works really good for like choir applications. We use that when we're doing C notes. Those are the ones that are that I hang up to pick up these C notes choir. They work really good for picking up instruments, especially acoustic instruments like acoustic guitars, fiddles, those kinds of things if they don't have built-in microphones in their instruments. Right? Also good for picking up groups like choirs or a group of people standing around together. They seem, condenser microphones typically pick up things from farther away better. But because of that, they also feed back easier in a live situation. They were more originally used in the studio. When they first kind of brought them out, they were very sensitive. You drop them on the floor. They didn't. When I used to tour in the 70s, I had a SM58. That's how long that microphone's still used all the time. And I used to swing it around on the end of the cable, and all kinds of times I went flying and hit a wall. I had that microphone for 20 years, it still worked. You couldn't do that with the condenser too many times before it was like not working anymore. So the 57, it was really funny. I used to play in a band with Claude Dupont, and his kids threw 3 of them in the pool. We took them out, dried them out, they still worked.
The 57s?
Yeah.
Wow.
They're just built. And the real funny thing is the 57, I bought 3 brand new ones back in 1974, I think it was, and they were $265 in 1974. You can now buy that microphone for $110 today, So back then, that's like $1,000 microphone today, right? So they've really come down in price. So everybody can have one of those then, but before it was like if you had a Shure microphone, it was like, ooh, he's got the pro stuff.
He's been making the big bucks.
Yeah, which wasn't true.
Which means he's not a real musician.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah. Any questions about those microphones?
Sorry, I think I heard it. This slide's gonna get put up on the.
Yes, you will have access to all this
Thank
stuff.
you.
Next slide. Okay, some more microphones we own. The Audex, right there, that is a cardioid microphone, condenser again. Those are those little tiny miniature hanging ones that we use for Gleek. Okay? But they can be taken down from there. We have clips for them. They can be put on a mic stand or used in front of an instrument if you really needed some more condenser microphones. They're not, as long as you remember to put them back so Janet doesn't rip the strip off yet.
Sorry, the 1255s are the ones that are hanging?
Yes.
I don't even know how to get to those, dude.
You're going to find out today.
Do those, are they good for when we are having people on stage talking that aren't loud talkers?
Yes, but any microphone, doesn't matter what kind it is, the closer you are to it, the louder you're going to be.
Mhm.
But those are good for picking up a group, again, from a distance, a little bit more from a distance. But if it's hanging down and a person walks up to it, we've done it many times. Peter's talked to the audience in front of one of those hanging there from about a couple of feet away. and you get a good sound.
What about though if it was a play?
As people move closer and farther away from it, you're going to have a change in volume.
Yeah.
Yeah, they wouldn't, you're really getting into really expensive microphones and overhead miking where they're following people around. That's way out of our league. Yeah.
Well,
But
that-
I have used them for a couple of times when Teresa did her shows and the kids were like really, really quiet. And so we kind of used them to help out. And that did make a difference. So you could do something like that. You'd have to experiment a little bit.
They would amplify stage sound as well, though.
Yeah, it picks up everything that's happening on stage. So people
Right.
walking on the floor, whatever, right? And the louder you get it, the more sensitive it gets to stuff like that. The Audex microphone next to it, we have 3 of those. Those are a really good microphone, actually. They're a great vocal microphone. You can use them for instruments too. They're really good for a female vocal. They don't have that really bottom end extra EQ boost that the 58 would have. So a lot of times if I'm giving a mic to a female, I'll give them one of those. Although with Patsy, the other one sounded better than this one. Although this was the next contender. This microphone here, the Rode, we own 2 of those. You know what? I don't like that microphone for what we do. I love that microphone for recording. But we have them, and if I was going to use that microphone, I would use it for like picking up an acoustic guitar or a fiddle or something like that. But they really do feedback really easy in a live situation. So I would stay away from that microphone unless you've run out of microphones and you need another condenser mic. Then grab one of those, but know that that microphone is going to give you feedback issues if you're running at louder volumes. Elliot used that a couple of times because he didn't know for, I think it was one of the weddings or whatever, and there was like ringing and all kinds of stuff that he couldn't get out of there. Just, as soon as you turn it past a certain level, it just wants to take off all over the place. So.
I like the sentence, one of the weddings.
Yeah. I can't remember which one it was.
Funny.
We also have this drum kit set. Now you really can't read it here, but they're marked bass kick drum or bass drum or something like that. And then there's 2 that are marked tom for tom-tom, like the tom mic drums. And one is marked snare. 2, 3. Not sure if there's that many. Yeah, there could be 3 toms and 1 snare. I can't remember. They got these clips attached to them, except for the bass drum mic, so that you can easily attach them to the rim of a snare drum or a floor tom or whatever. It's not a high-end kit, but it works pretty good. I use this one in Patsy on the snare, and I use that one on the kick drum.
What's your proximity?
Close.
Like an inch or less?
Yeah, an inch or 2, yeah.
Sorry, you said you did use this on Patsy?
Yeah, I did. I used the kick drum mic and I used the snare microphone because we only had a snare high, and I used the 57 on the hi-hat. This one here just screws onto one of those little stands that we have that are only a few feet high, and you can.
Oh, that's what those are for?
Yeah,
Those
they're
little
for miking guitar amplifiers that are on the floor, or kick drums and that kind of anything that's on the floor that you just want a short reach. You're not having a big stand going up and then a boom coming down to try to get at this thing. You can use one, and I think there's 3 or 4 of them back there. This microphone here, you can place it right in front of the kick drum. You can stick it through the hole of the kick drum. It all has different sounds. So it's more of a trial and error. Everybody has a different preference on how they mic down their kick drum. Some guys even mic both sides so they get that beater sound and that kind of thing.
I think we ran into an interesting thing on Patsy with the miking of the drums, Dennis, where the snare drum mic was picking up on a certain note that Carrie was singing, and then we ended up dampening down in the sound cue that snare drum mic because of
the microphone. So it was kind of like almost like a funny feedback through the snare drum. It was what was happening was there was a certain frequency that would cause the snares to rattle. So every time Patsy would hit that certain note that had that frequency, you hear the snares rattle in the bottom of the drum, right? Like, what the hell's going on? So, I had to do some EQing there to try to eliminate that, so.
So how often in a space like this would you need to mic a drum kit though? Like obviously if it was a live band scenario, like when we do
Most-
Susical, I guess we had our digital one.
Yeah, you're using your digital drum set. If you're using a live kit and it's not an acoustic show,
Mic
then
it?
you probably would want to mic the kick
Okay.
drum down. And you might have to, and then a lot of times we'll use the other Shure condenser microphones, I'll use them as overheads.
Okay.
So I'll put a microphone in front of the kick drum and I'll put an overhead above and that'll pick up all the toms and that good enough for an acoustic. And it gives it more of that acoustic sound, where miking down close to the drums gives you more of that electronic hard rock.
Because in my brain drums are loud, so why would you need to mic them if that makes sense?
Yeah, well, there's something that we'll talk about later is called the mix. Okay, so if you've got, here's your front of house speakers, and you got vocals coming through there, and maybe a fiddle and some other things, but all the drums are coming out from the stage, they're not in the mix anymore. So just because they're mic'd down doesn't mean they're louder. People, and it scares people when they go, well, why are you doing that? It's going to be louder. Well, no, not necessarily. If you turn it louder than the drum, then it will be than what the drum naturally is. But you bring your fader up until they kind of match. It's not any louder. The only difference is now there's sound coming out of those speakers instead of just off the stage.
You need them if you're recording the show as well.
Yeah, and if you're recording the show, you need them, yeah. So even though you may not have them coming through the front of the house, you might want to have them just so you can record the show.
Thank you.
Next slide. Okay, so we have one make of wireless systems, but 3 different. Yeah, so this, the whole wireless system thing is kind of a schmozzle because it started out, we got another actually wireless system. It's like 8 wireless microphones in one thing for $800. It's just a Al cheapo set that we bought for Glee when we first started because it was like, get something that, we need something for this many kids for as cheap as we can. So we did that. So then next it was, okay, we got more kids, we need some more stuff. So we bought the XD35s, we bought some of those, 6 of those. So now that was great, except the only problem is the XD35 only allows you to go from channel 1 to channel 6. So once we kind of went, well, those other cheapo ones we first bought, they're not working very good, so now we need to move up better. But always keeping cost in mind, and shows that were going on at the time needed more stuff, Super and Oz and all that kind of stuff. So we went to some of the XD55s, which will go from channel 1 to channel 12, right? And then I think in Susical they bought some of the XD75s, which go from channel 1 to channel 14. So just so you kind of get these ones here, you can set one of these to either channel 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, or 6, but you can't use channel 12 or channel 14 in that system. So when you step up to this one, well, now these 6 are all used up. So now you could actually, you would start at 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, and 12, 13 and 14. Okay. Now the crappy part, again, although these are decent, they're still not Sennheisers for twice as much money. So they have issues with frequency dropouts and stuff like that because they're just not, we just didn't spend the money for a really good system. Where was I going with that? Sorry. So, oh yes, that's what it was. So channels 1 to 6, or 1 to 5 actually, are the best channel. This is what you need to know about the system mostly. Are the best channels to use without any dropout. Okay, so if you've got 4 performers on when we did Patsy Cline, we used channel 1 to 5 to do the quartet and to do Little Big Man. As soon as you start going into the other channels, there's a possibility that cellular coverage and all kinds of things start to interfere with the channels, and you may have a good 9 might be great one night, or another night it might not be so great. I'm not gonna go too much into wireless systems, but the XE75 does have a thing in it that tells you a setting. You can go in there and it'll tell you which frequencies are good and which ones are bad. It has a little meter in it that tells you, okay, tonight channel 13 has got some sort of interference from the Rogers cell tower that's right next to us or whatever, right?
So can you use the old microphones from the 35 and only use one receiver, the 75? Or do you have to use all three receivers?
As far as microphones go, I'm not quite sure what your question is, but these ones here use a different style of plug-in for their headsets. So you can't use a V35 headset on a V55, but you can use, these two use the same input. And I always couldn't figure out why did they use a quarter-inch phone jack for these ones at Tipper and Speed. And I could never figure out why did they do that? Why didn't they make them all the same? Well, this wireless system here, the V35, which is their entry-level one, they also use it for their, the same case here is used for their guitar system. And so the guitar system needs a quarter-inch phone jack input, and to save money, they decided to use that same case for both systems, and that's why that microphone, and that's totally oddball. Nobody else uses that type of jack on a wireless headset. But was that your question? I'm so sorry.
Well, more or less. You're running two receivers then.
Yes, we have 6 of these. We have, I think, 4 of those, and I think 3 of these. You can run them all at the same time. If you want to run all 14 channels, then channels 1 to 6 would have to be on this one.
Right.
The remainder up to 12 on this one, and up to 14 on that one.
So you can't combine them, that was my question. You can't use just one receiver.
Oh yeah, you can use. You mean one of these?
No, it's a transmitter.
The transmitter.
Is that
No,
the actual
this
receiver?
one will work with that.
Oh.
Yeah, you can use if you use one of these, this one here, if it's from a 55, will only go up to channel 12. But this one here, if you use one of those, you could use that one with this one or that one with that one. These are interchangeable up to the channel limit, right?
Mm.
These ones you can use with those, but you're limited to channel 1 to 6. That's the big thing.
Just, so for each microphone, you have one of those receivers, is that correct?
Yes.
For each-
So-
if I have a microphone and you have a microphone, we each have 2 of those boxes happening.
So this is the transmitter. So the microphone plugs into it.
Yeah.
It sends the signal to here. These two have to be set on the same channel. So if that's set on channel 1, you set that one on channel 1, and it's going to pick up the signal from that microphone.
So there's a receiver for each microphone being used.
Yes. Yes.
Does that make sense?
No, there isn't. There's one receiver for the first 6 channels on the 35. There's
No,
No.
There's
there's,
not. There's 6 receivers?
there's 6
of
receivers,
them.
each set on a different channel.
I'm sorry, the little box is the receiver or the big box?
The
The big box is the receiver.
All right.
You have 6 receivers?
Yes.
Is there, but on the 75, there's only one?
I think we have 3 75s and one, actually an older model, it's actually a 70, but it's the same thing.
One
For each
microphone.
transmitter, we need a receiver.
Each transmitter needs a receiver.
Okay.
Yeah.
Second question.
Yeah.
Can you double channels?
No.
Okay.
No. If you got 2 set on the same channel, one will cancel the other one out. So they all have to be set on separate channels. So if things aren't working, it usually means they're not mated together, right?
Okay.
I'm sorry, I'm confused.
Just have to think that they're paired, eh?
Yeah. So, sorry.
Microphone pairs
so-
to transmitter to receiver.
I don't even really know where to begin the question. Okay, so for that one, we have 6 receivers. Can we use these in conjunction for a show?
Yes.
Yes.
All in
Okay.
each receiver plugged into a separate channel and
Okay.
attached to a separate
In
transmitter on
Susical, they
somebody's belt.
used all of them. So they had,
Okay.
let's say, if you had 14 people on stage and they all had to have headsets on, wireless headsets, which I think they did in Susical, was close to that. Then they all have to have one of these on them and a microphone and one of those picking up the signal that sends the signal to the soundboard.
And is there a problem with doing that? Is there a drawback to spreading it across them, or is it better to to do that and have different ones on different receivers?
Different qualities of mics.
Okay.
Really
So there are
dictates where.
6 of those big black Z35 boxes backstage?
Yes.
On
They're
that,
not
like,
that
shelving
big.
thing, they all stack
They're
up,
like,
right?
I'll show them all to you after.
Okay.
And if Horton's tree got in the way, we had an issue with signal.
Sorry, is there a difference in quality between the different,
Yes, there will, even in construction, the cases are stronger. But this is a digital system. And what that means is it takes an analog, Glenn, analog to digital, quickly, layman's terms.
Is that?
Analog, the difference between analog and digital in layman's terms, quickly.
In layman's terms, what you do is you take a waveform, which is continuous, like a wave in the ocean, okay?
Yeah.
The wave is a continuous action, right?
Yeah.
What you do digitally is you take a snapshot, in the case of a standard wave file, which is just, it's a term for a type of music file.
Yeah.
A wave file is sampled 44,100 times per second. So for every second of sound, you're taking 44,100 little snapshots. Okay? So when you string them all together, you have what almost looks like a continuous wave, but it's made up of 44,100 little steps. Okay? And those steps are the amplitude, the loudness, and the frequency, right? So that's the standard that we use for CDs. Now when we actually record at higher sampling rates than that, so that we get the best possible sound. Digital can sound a little coarse and grainy if you don't take enough of those little snapshots, those little photos of the sound as you're going up and down the waves. So analog is a wonderful thing if you've got the capacity and the bandwidth to run it, but it has other issues that you get other kinds of migration of sound into it that are a little harder sometimes to filter out. When in the digital world, we can send a signal stronger sometimes, we can send the signal with more filters built into it so we don't get a lot of extraneous things happening. But we run into another problem, which is the frequency that these things use happen to be exactly the same frequency that you use for your wireless. So your wireless router in here, a lot of your wireless devices like your computers happen to share that same 2.4 gigahertz frequency that our wireless systems do. And that's one of the reasons why Dennis mentioned earlier that one of the things we have to be careful of is using certain channels. Well, if a router is normally set for, say, channel 5 or 6 or 11, and that's a fairly standard setting for a router, that is going to be the same frequency, okay, that some of these devices are going to use. If we use channel 11 here, and we're using channel 11 on a router in the theater, we now have the potential for having some interference between the router and the microphone. So like Dennis said, the channels 1 through 5 are kind of our cleanest channels. 7 through 12 and 14 are good channels to use with the exception of 11 usually because they're not interfered with, but they have some other bandwidth kinds of issues the higher we go up the frequency range too. The reason we use the 2.4 gigahertz is that we can license that essentially for free without getting any special licensing from CRTC or FCC in the United States.
And that,
Yeah.
So the one crappy thing about this, the system that the 2.4 gigahertz is, it doesn't pass through solid things or big bags of water very well, like we are. So if you got this thing here on your back, and that thing there is in front of you, guess what's blocking the signal from getting through? Your big bag of water. As soon as you turn around this way, well, oh, now we've got a good signal again, right? So we had an issue in Wizard of Oz, and it took me the longest time to figure out what the hell was going on. But every time she would kneel, she got down here, and she would get down to the floor. The way that everything was, there was no line of sight between her, and she would drop out every single time. We tried different transmissions, we tried everything. Didn't make the difference. As soon as she did that, bang, it was gone, right? So you sometimes just have to move things around or reblock to kind of solve the problem. I don't want to get too much into wireless, because you can be here all day just on wireless. They have lots of there's all kinds of issues. You know, if we had the money to spend and buy better ones, we'd have less issues. But I don't know if you ever watch American Idol. They have issues and they got nothing but money. You know, so if you got wireless, you can go to the, you know, we saw the Wiz, they had wireless microphone issues. They're just
Oh, yeah.
par for the course, right? And you just got to learn, read up on them, and learn what causes those issues, and then there's ways to solve most of them. Like sometimes it's just a matter of reblocking somebody, the way that they're standing or moving Horton's tree a different place, or something like that, right? So, any more questions before we move on? If we have more time later, we will spend a little more time on the wireless when we can physically actually show you what it does. Next slide. So these are the microphones. I'm sorry the picture quality is not that great, but these are the microphones that we have for the wireless system. This one here came with the Line 6, some of the Line 6 systems that we got. Now, when I bought the V35s, they had really, really crappy headsets. And Brent will know because we had them for SUDs.
Oh yeah.
And they were those big things with a big ball in the end, and they kind of stuck out in front of your face, and they were like, you know, everybody could see them. They just weren't obscure at all. And so when I bought them, I decided I would buy the Lavalier. So you could buy them either with a headset or buy them with a Lavalier. And so, actually go back to that last slide, Peter. So that's a Lavalier microphone right there. Okay, it clips onto your shirt or whatever, right? So we have, I think, 6 of those. If you, for some reason, decided you wanted to use a Lavalier, you had a bunch of speakers, and you just wanted to use that and not have microphone headsets on them, they are there. They're in a silver case in the back.
But don't they just pick up all the rustle of your clothing and everything?
They can do. It's important to position them properly and that the people know who are wearing them. They can't fiddle with them.
Are those XLRs, lavaliers?
Nope, they're 4-inch phones. They have to be used with the V35s.
Okay.
Okay? So go back to that other slide.
So the lab mics, I've seen where they'll put them down like women's hairlines and stuff.
Yep.
That's the lab mic?
Yeah. Those ones are a little bit on the big side. They're not like the real high-end, tiny little skinny ones. There's a whole art to that. I found, if you want, I found a paper on that, on how to put them in people's hair, hide them behind their ear, glue them to their face, all kinds of stuff, right? So, yeah, there's a whole paper there I found that was really, really good on that. So this this headset that came with the V55s, actually, and the V75s, that's what you get if you order a headset system. You'll get this microphone. Okay. The way you can tell the difference between this one, and we're going to talk about that one in a minute, is the ears fold down flat. Okay, so like these little things that hoop over your ears, when you take them, they'll fold down flat onto the, if you had it on the floor, fold right flat to the floor, where these ones here, the Chinese ones, they don't. They're always in the up position. Okay? So these ones sell for about $150 a piece, depending on where you get them from. These Chinese ones sell for about $35 a piece. And a microphone that you would typically see at a big theater, like in Vancouver or something like that, or they generally use another microphone made by Countryman and a couple other brands, and they sell for like $650 each. Just to give you an idea of how down the ladder we are as far as quality these microphones go. With some EQing, the quality can be decent, but the big thing about both of these, because I don't see a huge difference between this $150 microphone and this $35 microphone as far as sound quality. It's not huge. As far as durability, they both break down the same. So I don't see spending a whole bunch of money on these ones. I would move up to a higher level microphone if I was going to buy something better. But you know, these ones, with if they're taped all properly and all, there's a bunch of stuff that I learned to stop them from breaking. They can last an entire show except Susical.
Yeah, no,
We got to a point where I told Janet that I just wasn't gonna be able to afford to replace them all the time, and we should probably just take them off of me.
Suzical did not, although I told some of the people, did not actually get everything all in the hurry of whatever, or maybe, and I wasn't involved, but they weren't all taped down properly, and that's where a lot of the breakage happens. Right, you can't see it too well, but right here, there's a little connector where the cable comes in, and if you don't loop it over and tape it, it'll just break right at the connection. Because these wires are like super, super skinny, and they're El Cheapo plastic with little tiny hair-like wires inside them, and you just give a tug on those and they'll rip right off. Where the Countryman microphone are Kevlar reinforced with removable cables so you can replace them. I mean, everything's done. That's why they're $600 right there. They'll last, but they break too. They'll last a lot longer. Same with right here. You see where the wire goes into the plug. I wrap tape around that to give it some relief so that it can't bend right over if you look at them. Otherwise, they break right there in no time flat. People rolling around on the floor with the transmitters on their back, and they get caught in their clothes. And nobody taped the cables to their back, and nobody paid attention to where the cable is hooked onto their belt or something like that, and they make a big twist and yank. They just can't take any abuse.
What are you taping them with?
Gaffer's tape.
Gaff tape?
Yeah.
Speaking of gaff tape, did Hanel talk to you?
Yeah, I told her it works.
The other thing here is the difference. You see this one here has what's called it's not a very clear picture, but it's called a mini XLR. That fits the 55s and the B55 and the B75s. And there's your 1/4-inch phone jack for the tip ring sleeve, which we'll talk a bit more about. Fits the B35. Okay, so we have some of these and some of these in both type of connections, but these ones we only have in the mini XLR because they came with the Line 6 microphone system. Questions? Next slide.
Right.
What time we got?
11 o'clock.
Wanted to talk a little bit about choir miking. This was something I had to learn when we started doing this, and I just Googled it, and just read articles about how to do it properly. And that last concert that we did with with C Notes and Glee and Weebly turned out really, really good just by following some simple rules that are here. So this is the 3-to-1 rule. So for every foot that the microphone is away from the person that's singing, if you're going to use more than one microphone, you need to, so if it's 2 feet, you need 6 feet in here. 3 feet, you need 9 feet between microphones. So little wireless microphones that are hanging down here are I think they're about 9 feet apart. The reason for that is because sound, I'm not going to get too much into this, and I don't, it's more that you just need to know this rule. But the sound coming from this voice to this microphone and to that microphone and to that microphone, if they're too close, they'll actually cancel out each other. It's called phasing. Okay? So if you follow this rule, a lot of people think, okay, well, I got a whole bunch of people, let's put 25 microphones all out there. Well, that ain't going to necessarily give you better pickup or better sound, because all those microphones are too close together. They're going to all start canceling each other out. If you want to learn more about that, Google it. It's on the internet. The other rule is here for height, right? That's what they recommend. And that's basically what I set for C Notes here. So you want to be roughly 2 to 3 feet above the person on the top row, as far as the height goes, and 2 to 3 feet away from the person in the front row, right? So you've got your risers there and people are standing on it. Microphones hanging down from the ceiling or on a stand up here. You want to be 2 feet roughly above this guy and 2 feet in front of that person. So now the distance
from the microphone being picked up equalizes out everybody's voices the best as possible. Now, that's a general rule. Sometimes you have to fiddle with it because maybe this person's a really loud singer, so you may want to move some, people around to a different spot. If they're in the choir are too loud in the microphone, they maybe need to be moved over here somewhere or something like that so that they're not quite as loud in the system. So sometimes you just gotta fiddle around. But those are the rules that you need to remember when you're setting up choir mics. And they say one microphone roughly for every 20 people.
So the reason for using microphones for a choir, which is loud enough on its own, would be the same as the drum kit and this to equalize the sound coming out of the speakers.
Yeah, to get them into the mix. And everybody in the whole room hears the same.
Okay.
So yeah, they might be really loud for the people in the front row, but the people in the back row aren't hearing it, right? Or you may have, the glees singing along, and they all got headsets,
Right.
and they're really nice and loud, but the choir's kind of like, they're kind of there, but they're not all the way there, right? So
And your band playing in the pit.
the band
that's
playing in the
coming through.
pit, and it's all kinds of reasons. Sometimes you don't need microphones at all. I mean, it's the same old thing, if you don't need it, don't use it, right? And it depends on the kind of sound you want, because amplified sound sounds different than acoustic sound. So everybody has a different idea, and there's ways. The farther they are, when it's set up like this, it sounds more acoustic than if you had a whole bunch of people all singing into one microphone. Each of their own microphones is going to sound different. This will be more blended, more sounding like a choir, and the other ones will be more like a group of individuals. And what I did, so these ones are, you can't see them here, but they're hanging right there and there. But when I did C-notes, there's some cables running from the back, and I'll show them to you later, that are kind of just hanging up in the rafters up there. And I just dropped them down and I taped them to those little mic stands. I took the stands off of them, like the weighted part, and I taped it to them so that you could adjust the microphone, and that worked really good without going out and buying, because those little miniature mics are like $500 a piece. So.
And I think Dennis has already posted some excellent videos in our SoundTech group in Facebook on miking choirs.
Yeah, there's a whole series there from Audex who made those little microphones. Them guys go through this whole thing. So, but that's the main part you have to remember. If you've got a group of 5 people or 6 people that you want to pick up, you only need one microphone. You don't need 3 microphones to try to pick them up. You'd be actually defeating the purpose by using too many. And then arrange your people around so that the loudest singers are farthest away from the microphone and the quieter singers are in the position where they're the closer.